Now hear the word of the Lord from Revelation 21, 1 through 7. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever." And the one sitting on the throne said, "Look, I am making everything new." And then he said to me, "Write this down, for what I tell you is trustworthy and true." And he also said, "It is finished. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To all who are thirsty, I will give freely from the springs of the water of life. All who are victorious will inherit all these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
You may be seated. Oh, good morning, Sojourn. Peace be with you. It's good to see you guys. Good to be with you this morning. If you are a guest or if you're visiting with us, my name is Jonah, and I'm one of the pastors here at Sojourn. Welcome to you. Our mission as a church is to reach people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the good news of who Jesus is and what Jesus has done for us. To build each other up as Jesus' church and send each other to follow Jesus. Pro-Jesus church, if you're new, a lot of Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Amen. So thanks for being a part of it. It's a special day, it's a special pre-day. Tomorrow's the day. Kristen Gillis is, front row. Kristen Gillis has been on staff for 10 years starting tomorrow, or as of tomorrow. Kristen has done a lot. She's had a lot of different roles in the church. Right now, she's the church administrator. She does stuff that people don't really see, but it basically keeps the church running and keeps me out of jail, so God bless you, sister. And it's just quite the thing to be on staff at a church for 10 years, so we've been through a lot together. Grateful for you. Maybe should we all just come up and give you a hug right now? Would you like that? A couple hundred strangers, all just saying thank you. So God bless you. We love you. Happy 10 years. Thank you to Kristen Gillis. Yes. What a treat. Also, if you're new or kind of getting new to the rhythms of our church, our volunteer system works on a trimester cycle. I'm bad at numbers, so in the first service I learned that means 4 months, not 3 months. So if you were wanting to get connected, or if you're wanting to make this place feel less like a place you visit and more like a place you belong, serving is probably the best way to do that. When you sign up to serve here, you're making a 4-month commitment. You shouldn't amen this. Some churches do like a lifetime commitment, and like once you're in, it's just like, it's the grave or blow up. You know what I mean? If you don't like it, you just stop afterwards. It's great. In the worst case scenario, you've met a bunch of people and you've helped out. So if you want to get more plugged in, or you want to maybe figure out what you're good at, make this church feel more like your home, the next service trimester starts next week. So if you want to try something, if you have no idea what you want to do and you're just willing, here I am, Lord, send me. Fill out a Connect card, stop at the welcome table. You can drop those Connect cards in the buckets that will go by towards the end of the service. And we'd love to help you find a place to help this place feel more like home and help us all play the parts that we have to play. Also, we're trying something new. We're a bit of a oddity in terms of churches, because our kids' discipleship classes runs K through 5th grade, so that's 12 years old and under. And right now we have about the same number of 12 and unders as we do adults, which is not usually how churches roll, which means it always feels like we're kind of running thin over there. And we're always trying to figure this out, because one of the principles behind the scenes is at our church is, if our systems of being the church make Jesus seem like he was lying to us, we're going to lean more towards changing the system at the church than we are to deciding Jesus is a liar. Does that make sense? We believe Christianity works. So when Jesus says something like, "Come to me and you will have rest. My yoke is easy, my burden is light." But the way we go about being Christians makes us all exhausted and anxious. Something has gone off there, and we don't think it was Jesus. Are you following me so far? So we're trying something new at Sojourn Kids because I'll just tell you, like, doing the dance Thursday afternoon to Saturday night of reaching out to 80 people and see who can feel bad enough to fill a hole in it at the end, it's just like a bad experience for everybody. You know what I mean? It's bad when you feel bad and like, I guess I have to, or all the kids are going to be mad at me. It's bad to have to ask 100 people. And we want to be a long-haul church. We don't want a system that works today and then we'll leave everybody feeling anxious and stressed out tomorrow. We want something that feels sustainable for 20 years. And so we're still trying to figure that out with Sojourn Kids, especially when we have this window of time where it's just disproportionate. We have more kids than most churches our size do. So starting with this trimester, I really hope this makes sense and is clear. We're only going to open Sojourn Kids classes that are sustained with volunteers for the next trimester. So if we don't have volunteers scheduled for the next trimester, then that class won't open. So one of the things we believe is that God gives us everything we need to do everything he wants us to do. So if we don't, I'm just making this up right now, if we don't have volunteers to lead our 4-year-olds or our 4th grade class, we will take that as revelation from the Lord that the 4th graders are supposed to be in the service and not that class. So we're only going to open classes where we have volunteers that can sustain us through the whole trimester. So we don't have to do that anxious dance of asking people up to the 11th hour. If we don't have a class that opens, we're trusting that we will by the next trimester. But again, classes without adequate support aren't going to be opened for the next trimester. Not the next Sunday, the next trimester. And we're just going to trust that we have the goal of reopening them over the next trimester. So if you, and also we want people that want to be there, not people that feel bad about being there. So we're looking for the folks that are like, I want to invest in these kids. I love what Jess said, like that idea of building up the next generation and investing them, a sense of calling, not a sense of guilt or anxiety. So if you're like, oh man, I could be interested in that sounds good. Again, fill out a Connect card. You can stop by the welcome table. We'd love to get you cycled in and help that out. And I'm excited to see what happens. And if this is a total disaster and everybody's angry, then we'll just try it again, like any of the other things that we've tried and it hasn't worked. So we're trying this because again, we think Christianity works and Jesus wasn't a liar. Amen? We'll see how it goes. So thanks for hopping in if you can. I have no smooth transition, so may I preach a sermon now? Keen? Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to preach now. This story is crazy. It's a real highlight of my origin story. One summer, I was in college, and any Young Life people in here? Anybody? A couple? Yeah. Okay, that's crazy to me. There was nobody in the 9 a.m. service. Young Life is a thing. You can Google it. It's how I became a Christian. So one summer in college, I was working at a Young Life camp in Colorado, Estes, just outside of Estes Park, Colorado, if you know that part of the country. Totally gorgeous. I had the coveted role of town runner, which meant a couple of things. And also, for the sake of the story, you have to know I had hair down to here at the time. I just had beautiful curly hair, natural highlights. I mean, it was just... It's hard to believe, but it's true. And I got to drive a 1982 baby blue Chevy Suburban, which that's when a Suburban meant something. Like now Suburbans, but it was like cool and boxy and the back window rolled down. And so what my role at the camp was, this camp was in the middle of nowhere. And so I got to be saddle up Old Blue, and I would drive into town and pick up the mail, or if we needed an extra 75 gallons of milk for the thing that night or whatever. When the high school student went too crazy on the zip line and broke his leg, I would take him to the emergency room. Like that was my job. I couldn't drive the baby blue Suburban on camp though, so this was the cool part. And this is where you got to imagine in my head. One other important detail. This is the late 90s, okay? And so I had bought a pair of Oakley sunglasses that Tom Cruise wore in Mission Impossible. You're familiar? The metal ones that look like robot sunglasses. It's an important part of the story, not just because of how cool I looked in them. When I'd get back from camp, I would take the stuff from the Suburban and load it up in this 4-wheel drive off-road golf cart. So think of like a golf cart with a lifted suspension and big knobby tires. And just imagine, I'm driving through the mountains in my off-road golf cart, my Tom Cruise sunglasses, my curly hair blowing in the wind, and it was just incredible. The very last day of camp, We had nowhere to sleep because we were like good Christians. We were going to sleep on the floor of like the auditorium that night. We made up all the beds because the new crew was coming in the next night. And you got to know, I drove these dirt roads up and down the mountains of Crooked Creek Ranch 7,412 times. I was very confident in these roads and my ability to navigate them. There's one part of the camp where you go down a hill and make a long, slow right turn and drive right through the main drag of the camp. I'm the only one who's allowed to drive, the town runner, the only one who's allowed to drive through the camp. And so this road, I would fly down and turn like a rally car. You guys know what rally racing is? Just if you don't, imagine me sliding sideways, again, long hair blowing in the wind, a rooster tail of dust flying up behind me, and then I'd fly through the middle of camp, letting all the high schoolers know who's the coolest at camp. I had done that turn, spinning sideways 419 times flawlessly. Last day of camp, I've got one of my colleagues with me, and I said to him, I was like, hey, you want to do something awesome? And he was like, what? You know, he's all scared and nervous. I'm like, I'm going to terrify him. I didn't want to scare him too much, just a little bit, you know what I mean? And it's debatable, but I perhaps went a little too hard this last time. Maybe you're wondering what makes me say I went too hard. Well, the fact that the golf cart ended up on its side, sliding about 50 yards with my friend laying on top of me and all of the stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, how embarrassing. He gets up, you know, disheveled but kind of crazy. I didn't really know anything terrible had happened until I stood up and I heard high school girls screaming as I looked down and I'm dripping blood. So what had happened is these are gravel dirt roads on the camp. When I flipped the golf cart, my body drug along this gravel road for about 50 yards. I actually wrote a letter to Oakley Sunglasses after this because the Tom Cruise glasses kept my face like a half inch off the ground and they didn't break. And so I was like, I'm an Oakley man for life. So this face stayed intact, but if you come up afterwards, I'll show you the scars on my hands. But basically imagine putting the backs of your hands, arms, and legs on a cheese grater for like 50 yards. That's the vision. So I stood up, covered in dust, the camp screaming, I'm dripping in blood, and I got to spend like the next 2 hours in the camp nurse's clinic having the volunteer nurse pick rocks out of my bones and flesh for it. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds bad. And it wasn't a great experience. What was truly terrible, though, is the months afterwards when I was trying to recover. So I got all bandaged up, and by that night, I realized I just was a different person, head to toe. Everything hurt. And I had to spend the next couple of months learning how to be me in light of all of these injuries. I can still remember the look on my mom's face when I came like waddling off the airplane to Florida, and she saw me all bandaged. I wouldn't let people touch me, because if somebody touched me, I would scream and just recoil. I had to learn how to do all of the basics all over again. I had to brush my teeth differently. I don't know if you've ever tried to go to sleep when your whole body hurts and there's no safe, comfortable spot to lay. But I mean, it's all of these things that you don't think of, I had to learn how to do different because I hurt so badly. My whole life became about managing this pain that I was in. And maybe you're here and be like, I thought we were in a sermon series about heaven. Why are you telling the story? When I got off the plane, my wounds were very easy to see. They were visible because they were physical. When I met folks in Florida, I was living in Florida at the time, the intro question was obvious. What happened to you? Obviously, something had happened to me. But so many of the most painful wounds that all of us carry are way harder to see. All of us get wounded in this life. If no one has told you, I'm sorry to be the first, but pain in this life is unavoidable. Wounding in this life is unavoidable. But I think for all of us, the most painful wounds that we carry are not physical ones. And so they're not easy to see. They're relational wounds, or you might think of it as like an emotional or a spiritual wound. Because so many of our hurts come in relationships. How people did or did not show up for us. How we did or did not show up for others. How people did or did not love us. How people did or did not welcome us. And just like I had to develop new strategies to manage the pain of my physical body, every single person in this room has had to develop relational lifestyle strategies to manage the pain of these emotional, relational wounds that we have carried. So much of our life becomes pain management to avoid these old wounds that we carry. I could spend the next 2 hours trying to explain this. Hopefully some of you understand. I'm just going to use one example real quick. You could just take a second and think about the stereotypes we have in our country of what is a man and what is a woman. Well, you know, women are just da-da-da-da. And I'm going to talk about men because I'm frankly scared of the women, and I don't want to, speak on behalf of you. So, one of the most common stereotypes of men in the United States is that we are, emotionally detached and unavailable. And I'll just tell you, first of all, there is no Bible verse that says this is biblical manhood, which is a thing that everybody loves talking about right now. There is no verse that describes a biblical man is this, masculinity is this. The Bible doesn't do that. And you have no verse that says to be a man means don't talk about how you feel. Don't share what you're doing. That's an American thing. That's not a Christian thing. And there are all kinds of cultures around the world where men actually talk about how they're doing. There's cultures around the world where men will hold hands with other men because they're friends and they love them. And it's just a very normal thing. So this is something that we don't do because of a cultural thing. And little boys learn really early on what our culture values in terms of men. We like men that produce, so we celebrate the wealthy people, we celebrate the guy that started his own business, or we celebrate the men that die for us, soldiers. Think about the men that we celebrate, and those are the ones as a culture we celebrate. So men real early on learn this is what we have to be, or else it will really hurt when I open up, because our culture just frankly doesn't know what to do with an emotionally aware, vulnerable man. And so men develop all of these strategies to avoid the pain of what happens when we share this out. And so now we have this stereotype of what does it mean to be an American man. And it's just all pain management. Whether you're a man or a woman, young or old, we all have strategies to manage our wounds. I promise you I'm going to talk about heaven. This has something to do with heaven. So here in week 4, talking about heaven, we've tried to answer the questions, what is heaven, where is heaven, and who gets to go to heaven? A really important question that we have to ask now is, what in the world are we going to do in heaven? We've touched on it a little bit, but we're going to try to answer that this morning. What will we do in heaven? And I think one of the best ways we can answer that is by just letting our imaginations be stirred by the reality of, first, what will we not do in heaven? We looked at this passage from Revelation a couple of weeks ago, and it's just too good not to soak in it again. This is a picture of the end of time. I don't mean the end times. I mean when time stops being a thing anymore. It just ceases to exist. Our understanding of this linear progression of time just is gone now, where we just exist. And King Jesus, the Lord, returns, and listen to what he will do for us on that day. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. In Florida, on that magical day when I realized I could open and close my hands again without pain, I didn't have to take a class on how to brush my teeth. I'd learned a different way of brushing my teeth that didn't hurt. When it stopped hurting, I just very naturally was able to brush my teeth again because the pain was gone. My long, luscious hair, no one had to teach me how to comb my hair again. I just naturally was able to do it because the pain was gone. I was able to go to bed like I always had because the way I was meant to be was restored and I became myself again. So maybe just try to take a quick second and inventory for yourself all of the ways you try to manage pain. Some really normal ones. Normal meaning most of us do this. That random outburst of anger, anybody ever had that? Where you say something and there's a part of you that's like, where did that come from? It just launched out. Maybe the way you give people that cold-shouldered silence, the way you keep people at arm's length, the way you fill your life with busyness so you don't have to interact too much, the way you don't lie because you're a Christian, but you just fudge the truth a little bit, you know what I mean? Anybody have the gift of story exaggeration? Is that just me? Your habits, your addictions. Maybe you learned to develop an exaggerated sense of humor to make things bigger and funnier than they actually are. Maybe the ways you've learned to just stay quiet. I could do this all day. These are all pain management strategies. In heaven, you won't need any of these strategies anymore because your pain is gone forever. Just what sweet freedom that will be when that healing comes for us. Your true self will be restored, which means you will be set free. It's worthy to just soak in that with your imagination for a time. What would you do if you could really trust somebody? What would you do if you knew it was going to work out? What would you do if you knew you had enough time? What would you do if you really knew it wasn't even a question anymore how safe you are, how loved you are, how strong you are? What would you do if you had no fear of sorrow or pain? If you have even a shadow of an answer to any of those questions, you have some sense of what you would do in heaven. And it will be glorious. So, big picture, what will you do in heaven? You will do all of the things you would do if you were free from fear and free from pain. There's a part of me that just kind of wants to end the sermon there, because I think that's all I really wanted to say. But it's 11:40 and I might get fired. What will you do in heaven? You'll do all the things you would do if your life were free from fear and pain. Let that set your imagination on fire. The Bible does let us get a little more specific than this. And I think I'm going to say a couple things else, I guess. This verse from Revelation 5 I'm about to read for you gives us a great picture of what I mean in terms of pain management versus being set free from pain. So Revelation chapter 5, Jesus reveals to John, and John hears, it says, every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea. Wild, all of them. He hears them, all of them. And what are they doing? They sang, blessing and honor and glory and power belong to the one sitting on the throne and to the Lamb forever. So one thing we can say for sure we're going to do in heaven is sing. Which I've been at Sojourn Church for 15 years, and I know that's not going to make everybody excited. It's like, man, I thought we were talking about what's going to be good about heaven. I'm going to have to sing up there. So again, this is not crowd participation time, unless you want to say amen or something. But think about why you don't sing in church. I'm not saying everyone doesn't sing in our church. Our little church here has come a long ways in how we sing on Sundays. But maybe just take a quick second and answer for yourself, why don't I sing in church if you know you and you know you don't sing? Which, as a side note, it's worth saying everybody sings, yeah? Anybody got stuck on traffic on the 2nd Street Bridge anytime in the last week or two? Anybody? And just next time that happens, just look around and watch all the idiots singing in their car. You know what I mean? When you're alone in your car, you're singing. Dad, I see you singing K-pop Demon Hunter, amen? You know what I mean? Don't act like you're not. Don't act like I am. I got busted by a Menards worker the other night singing K-pop Demon Hunter, and he walks up to my window. I didn't even think about it. Just a dad by himself at 9:30. You probably sing in the shower, or you sing making coffee in the morning. Everybody sings. But then we get to church, and what kind of things do we hear? Here's what I hear. People say things, well, I sound bad. I mean, I don't sing well. Well, therefore what? What happens if you do sing, you who sing poorly? Well, the people around me will be like, look at that guy, he sings terribly. And therefore what? Well, therefore I'll be embarrassed, and they won't like me, and now I won't have any friends, and I'll die alone. Or you see the pain that we're trying to manage there? At Sojourn, so this is historically true, We have a lot of people who their most expressive form of worship at Sojourn Church is this move. You know, hands in our pockets, and we just kind of hunker down. And you say, like, hey, what's the deal there? And they'll say, like, well, I don't want to be a distraction. Why? Well, they'll look at me. And then what? And then they'll know I'm one of those Christians. And then what? Well, then they won't like me. And then I'll die alone or whatever. You know? And what's ironic about that crowd, I love you guys so much. Like, I've given like half my life to this place. Like, I love you guys. But like, especially when I lived in Louisville and we were in the Highlands, I would see these people doing this move on a Sunday, and then I'd go to a bar with the punk rock show, and these same dudes are, I just kick the, you know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden you find out how to dance and kick and scream and shout, and it's like, well, boy. Or you go to a U of L game with them, and you're like, well, look who found some volume, you know? Do you see the pain management in what I'm saying? That fear of disapproval, that fear of embarrassment. And I'm not trying to say any of that's wrong. I think it's quite understandable. But I want you to imagine in heaven, we will sing and celebrate freely because all of that pain will be gone. Can you remember a time where you got swept up into the roar of a crowd at your favorite concert or favorite sporting event, and without thinking, you just responded with joy and celebration? This is us, and this will be us. And I just find it incredible that all of creation is gathered together to join in the song. This is a little embarrassing for me to say, but it looks like the opening scene to Lion King for me. You know, all of the animals come out. I learned that an elephant call is called trumpeting. The elephants are trumpeting, and the gazelles are doing gazelle things, and the whales are doing whale things, and they're all singing along, and we will be swept up in that crowd, free from the fear of embarrassment or disappointment or pain, and we will respond with joy, swept up with all of creation in a song of joy. And now you might say, well, what do we do when the singing is over? Because it's not going to be singing forever. And this, I don't know how anybody's going to feel about this, but this just is so wonderful to me. Somebody asked, how do we know to take this stuff in Revelation seriously? And it's not just like a poem or a metaphor or an image. One of the ways you can figure that out with the Bible is if you let other verses in the Bible teach you how to read the Bible. So if other things in the scriptures affirm something else that the scriptures say, we can begin interpreting these things in light of each other. So when we see images in Revelation that are very similar to other things in the Bible, then we know how we can interpret this. So you go back to Isaiah, who's telling us these promises of what's going to happen when Messiah comes and restores all things. Listen to this. In verse 21 of chapter 65, Isaiah said that in those days, people will live in houses they build and eat the fruit of their own vineyards. Where will you go when the concert's over? You're going to go to your house. I just find that so wonderful. You're going to go home. And maybe some people have had this question, well, what will our mansions look like in heaven? It seems like it will look like whatever you want it to. Why? Because you built it. And now again, someone's gonna be like, oh, that sounds so terrifying. Can you imagine how your house projects would go if you had all of the time, none of the frustrations, and all of the money? What would you build? What would it look like? And you're like, I don't know how to build stuff. Well, time doesn't exist anymore. So you have time to figure it out. You have friends that will come over and teach you. Do you want an A-frame cabin by the woods? Do you want a Mediterranean-style stucco beach house? Do you want a sprawling ranch on 70 acres with room for chicken and raised garden beds? Build it. Dream it. You can make it. When the singing's over, you'll go home to a house that you build. And what will you, did you see that part? They will eat fruit of their own vineyards. You're going to grow your own food. Your hands will smell like the earth. You'll be so deeply connected with the place you live. You'll be free and you'll be provided for. What would you do? What would you try if that fear of failure, that belief you only have so many resources or so much time, if all of that was gone? And do you notice, again, this has been a theme throughout the series, but do you notice how physical all of this is? You have a body that can sing. There are animals there. You have a home. You have land. You have food. Isaiah continues in verse 22, unlike the past, invaders will not take their houses and confiscate their vineyards. Here's my interpretation of this. None of the doors in heaven have locks on them. You just don't need them. You might have some fences for your cows, but they're not going to be fences that keep people out. We won't live in fear of invasion, of theft. There's no danger. There will be no military or defense spending in heaven. There will be no fear of oppressive governments or tyrants. There will be no worries about people in far-off places sending our children to war. There will be peace and safety and freedom. This part makes my heart beat fast. Verse 23, they will not work in vain, and their children will not be doomed to misfortune. Who among us has not sat in their office one day and said, what am I doing with my life? What is all of this for? We have all felt the vanity of our work days. Some of you fantasize about a life with no work, with nothing to do. That's not a biblical vision. Instead, I want you to try to imagine, what might it look like if you knew your job was so meaningful and it was never aggravating? Can you imagine? In the garden, we had a job. Before sin, before rebellion, before anything went sideways, we had work to do. To be human is to have work to do. In heaven, we will have work to do. The work will be satisfying, meaningful, purposeful. Projects will go on time. We won't even have budgets because that won't exist anymore. Everything will go. We won't worry about our life's purpose because we'll have it in abundance. It'll be a question we don't even think about anymore. Parents, can you imagine what it'll be like when you don't worry about children anymore? Are they going to turn out okay? Are they okay? Is everything all right? We won't worry about our children because sorrow, pain, death are no more. What will we do in heaven? We'll sing freely and passionately. We'll go home to a beautiful house that looks just like you want it. We'll eat delicious food. We'll work meaningful jobs. And all of it we will do free of pain. I'm just going to give you a couple of more. Here's one I'm excited about. In Ephesians, Paul tells us that God raised us from the dead along with Christ. Listen to the words. And seated us with him in the heavenly realms. Why? Because we are united with Christ. So God can point to us in all future ages as examples of the incredible wealth of his grace and kindness towards us. It's kind of a weird passage in English. You can read other translations and fill out the sense of it. When it says point here, he can point to us. It means he can reveal to us. He can share with us. And the all future ages, this is talking about ongoing revelation, where God can look down at us and show us things and use us as evidence to other people. What he's saying is that in heaven, we will continue to grow. We'll continue to have new things revealed to us, which means at some point you might say, I'm going to put a west wing on my house. And I'm going to build this because now I know how to do, I don't know, cantilevered ceilings. I don't even know if that's a thing. I'm just making up words right now. But we'll learn and we'll grow and we will continue to develop. Can you imagine the skills you could develop when time and resources stop limiting you? The mysteries you could explore, the things you could discover. Imagine who you might become. We'll see this more. We've got a new sermon series coming up in a couple of weeks. Maybe last week, if you were here, you heard me refer to God as Lord of the parties. In my mind, when I think about this revelation, this ongoing revelation, I think about God standing around a campfire telling us stories revealing stuff, sharing stuff to us, and then asking us, do you want to go see? Do you want to explore? Do you want to learn? Do you want to hear? And the more you read the Bible, the more you will see like God is always looking for an excuse to bring out the meat smoker and invite the neighbors over. He's always looking for a party to gather people and share what he's done. And that's like the next 10 weeks between after this and Advent. Over and over, Old Testament and New, the Bible explicitly tells us that heaven will be marked by celebrations. And I know enough people here to know that parties make a lot of us uncomfortable, but try to imagine a party when you're not scared anymore. Isn't there a part of you that wishes you could dance? Isn't there a part of you that wishes you could laugh with friends and not be afraid? Heaven will be marked by feasting, eating, celebrating. We say this line every week. In his revelation to John, listen to what is said about heaven. Blessed are those who are invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb. I'm just very interested in going to a party thrown by the person who invented wine. What kind of meal might the chef cook when the chef is the one who created fire? Can you imagine what might be waiting for us there? There's so much more that we could say. It's really quite exhilarating when you start looking at the pictures the Bible gives us. But the answer to the question, what will we do in heaven, is closer to us than we might guess. This is the simplest way I can say it. In heaven, we will do all the glorious things that we do down here, but we will do them free. Free of pain, free from the fear of constraint or scarcity, free from all of the strategies we've had to put on to try to stay safe. Free. In heaven, we are truly free. Everything we do on earth, we will do in heaven. It's just in ways that are hard for us to imagine today. It's hard for me to imagine what being a friend will look like when I'm not so scared that they won't like me, you know? It's hard to picture that. So maybe a good exercise to fuel our imaginations and maybe stir some hope might be to take some time and just try and imagine, what would you do if you knew you were safe? What would you do? What might you say if you knew how loved you are? What might you do if you were confident and you knew that you belonged? Or maybe just simply, what would you do if your pain was gone? And I think the simple answer is we would be free. So, I guess that's all I really wanted to say. In heaven, we will truly be free. Thanks be to God. If you're willing and able, stand with me and we'll pray.